Hey, what's up guys, this is Terabyte, and welcome back to Asagao Academy. So, in the last one it was really sad, because John lost shock, but we're not supposed to tell anybody. So, let's see what happens in this next one here. I'm kinda sad. So, I eagerly awaited John's arrival the next day, images of his distraught form alone in his room having plagued me all night. Even though I knew he needed time alone, and he was grateful I left him, I still felt like I abandoned him when he needed me most. I had Mai to help me when I was down. At best, I left John with PBG. If he didn't tell PBG anything, then I just left him to suffer alone. I twiddled my thumbs by my desk, turning every time I heard the door open. No. Not him either. But PBG and John were roommates. Shouldn't John be with him? Geez, Hana, you're gonna get whiplash the way you're whirling around like that. You sure you're alright? Yeah, I'm fine. Everything is fine. Yet again, Mai knew better, but she didn't press the issue. Apparently after last night, if I didn't want to talk, she wasn't gonna make me. Not while we were in class, at least. When the warning bell played, I finally got up and crossed to PBG's desk. I needed answers. Hey, PBG.
Hey.
Hana, what brings you to this side of the room? Well, did PBG not know? I needed to talk to John about something, but he isn't here yet, is he? Oh yeah, he wasn't feeling well this morning. He said he was gonna stay in bed all day. He pursed his lips. John's been acting really weird since yesterday, though. That morning, he was fine. I mean, you saw him. But when I got back from practice yesterday, he was in bed. He didn't want to go eat. That was how I knew that was how bad he felt. But he wasn't coughing or anything either. I hope he's not depressed. Yeah, I hope not too. I tried to smile or do something to not raise suspicions, but PBG cocked an eyebrow at me. Hana, you wouldn't happen to know anything about this, would you? Me? John made me promise not to tell anybody, and I wanted to remain faithful to that promise. But this wasn't like telling Mai. PBG was one of John's best friends, and his roommate. If something was going on with John, PBG was the person most likely to notice, most likely to worry, most likely to be able to do something about it. What if I didn't tell him and something bad happened? But if John ever found out, I knew he wasn't gonna like it. Well, I recognize the conundrum, but when you start getting into staying in bed all day, not eating, that's when it starts to become really serious. Because if you go days and days on end like that, that's where it becomes a really big problem. So, I mean, I'm going with tell PBG. You can't tell anybody. I wasn't even supposed to find out, I don't think. But I want you to be able to take care of him. PBG nodded gravely and bent towards me. I cut my hand around his ear. Jacques broke. PBG snapped upright, a look of horror on his face. He wasn't in the room last night, now that I think about it. Oh man, this is not good. You're not gonna tell him I told you, are you? PBG looked at me, then smiled as if he were holding a little baby kitten. He patted the top of my head lightly. Of course not. I'm not stupid. I know you wouldn't want him to know, but thanks for telling me. I grumbled as I straightened my bow, smiling in spite of myself. I was glad I could rely on PBG. I'll just try to pretend I noticed it, even if I bring it up. Or if I even bring it up. The loss of a pet can be really hard, so I know what he's going through. PBG touched a hand to his neck, suddenly staring into space. You okay? Sorry? Oh, anyways, I'll make sure to take care of him. Thanks for letting me know. No, thank you. I'm glad you're looking out for him. You're a good friend. PBG smiled, then tipped his head back. Yeah, I know. Pfft. I shoved him, giggling, then went back to my desk. Still, I wasn't comfortable just leaving John alone for the day. As Miss Shizuka entered and started taking roll, I made up my mind. I had to go check on him. As soon as the bell rang, I shot out of my chair.
Hana!
Hana?
See you later.
Don't worry about me, I'll see you after lunch. I sped out of the room, evading students pouring into the hall, and turned away from the crowd towards Bluebell House. I passed the sign where John first stood and told me that we were in the same class, then speed walked past the field. I got lost the very first day at Asagao. If John was suffering on his own, I wasn't about to sit around and let him. John? John, it's me, Hana. You weren't in class today, and I was worried, so I came to check up on you. Won't you let me in? There was only silence from inside John's room, and suddenly fear crept into my heart. John, you're not, sick or anything, right? You haven't done anything rash, right? Ooh.
Hey!
John! The doorknob turned with a soft click, and the door opened about an inch. I peered into the crack, unable to see anything but the blue walls of John's room. John? Again, there was no response. After a moment's hesitation, I gathered my courage and pushed the door open. Aww. John sat huddled in the center of the room, the blanket I laid over his shoulders an afternoon before drawn tightly over his body. It looked like he hadn't slept or even brushed his teeth since I saw him last. Even his clothes looked to be the same ones he was wearing the day I left. His jacket smudged with oil from Jacques' gears. I closed the door softly behind me and sat across from him on the sofa, tucking my legs underneath me. John. His eyes were red and puffy. There was no doubt in my mind that he had been endlessly crying. I'd been there before, though not exactly. I knew something of what he was going through. I reached into my backpack and took out a small bottle of water, sliding it over to him. For the first time, John responded to me. He grabbed the bottle and tried to twist the top open. His grip was weak, and after 2 failed attempts, he stared sadly at the bottle. How weak was he? Had he been eating or drinking at all since yesterday? I twisted the top of the bottle, then handed it back to him. Within a few quick gulps, the bottle was empty. My fears were confirmed. He probably wasn't eating or drinking. Yeah, see? And that's why we told PPG, because that's serious business. He thumped the bottle on the table, the hollow echo sound loud in the room, in the silence of the room. Then, for the first time since I came in, he looked at me. I'm going to quit the drama club.
What?
You're what? He held up his hand as if to stall my questions, glancing away. You don't understand. Jacques was my star, my queen. He was my everything. I can't go on without him. So I might as well quit. Nothing will ever be the same. John quitting the drama club was the most ridiculous thing I had ever heard of, especially with the depth of extremes his own drama queen personality could get to. Still, if John set his mind on something, there was little I or anybody else could do to dissuade him. I bit my lip and nodded. But after seeing his passion for his work, after finally coming to the conclusion that I wanted to join the play to be with him, I didn't want him to quit. Not after all the hard work he'd gone through. So, we're going to dissuade John, because he's making a snap decision and not thinking about it. Even if this is what John decided to do, I knew better than that. He knew better than that. This was a decision made in a momentary fog of sadness. It wasn't something he should stick to, or else he would regret it down the line. So, I really don't think you should quit. John turned to stare at me blankly, wrapping the sheet around his head so he looked like a nun. It made me want to laugh, but I held it in. You know how much the drama club means to you. And I'm sure Jacques wouldn't want you to quit either. I'm sure he would be on your shoulder right now, giving you a ton of sass. For the first time, I realized one of the reasons Jacques was so important to John. He balanced out John's personality. Jacques was able to quickly nip John's anxiety in the bud with humor, refocusing John's thoughts on Jacques' sass instead of letting him descend into the darkness. I knew I couldn't replace Jacques, but maybe. Don't tell me what Jacques would have wanted. How could you even know? You didn't even like him. What? No, I loved Jacques. John, I'm just as sad as you that he's gone. As soon as it was out of my mouth, I wanted to take it back.
No!
That wasn't what I meant to say. Hana. The warning was clear. I nodded and hung my head. I messed up there. That was definitely my fault. But all I wanted to do was make it better. John shouldn't leave the drama club. I glanced up at him. He was staring wistfully out the window, the clouds having finally parted and let in some sunlight. As the sky reflected in his eyes, an idea suddenly hit me. Wasn't there another option? John heaved a heavy sigh, resuming his dejected state. I wasn't sure how he would take it, but it was worth a try. After all, it was just a suggestion. All he had to do was say no if he didn't want to do it. He wouldn't get upset about a suggestion, would he? John, I was thinking. Why don't you just go to the pet store and get an actual bird? One that looks exactly like Jacques, and you can tell everyone that it's the same bird, and just pretend everything is the same. John looked at me in surprise, but didn't say anything. I pushed through. I could even go with you if you want. Then you could keep going with the play, you wouldn't have to quit the drama club, and no one will ask bad questions. What do you think? Huh. John released something that sounded like laughter, but it wasn't. It definitely wasn't. How could you suggest such a thing, Hana? Replace my precious Jacques like he's a piece of meat? Or an object? Well, he is an object. He's a computer program. Or he was, I guess. What the fuck's wrong with you? Jeez. John slammed his hand on the table and I jumped to my feet, somewhat shaken. Over my dead body, Hana. I never thought you were this kind of person. I'm glad I found out, though. I can't believe I almost made you a tree in my play. Calm down, it was just a suggestion. If you don't like it, you don't have to do anything about it. Get out of here. This is a sacred space. The likes of you aren't welcome. John glared at me like the patriarch of some 1950s family, and I picked up my bag. I was just trying to help. Out! I stumbled out into the hallway, the door slamming behind me. As much as I knew he wouldn't like the suggestion, there was no reason for him to react the way he did. I was his friend, not an alien in human skin. He should have given me the benefit of the doubt, should have trusted where I was coming from. No. I shook my head. Grief did more than make people sad. It made them sensitive, stressed, and volatile. Looking back at the months after my mother died, I did my best to contain my emotions, but even then I lashed out, especially at the people I loved most. John was going through a hard time, and I might have made things worse for him. No longer hungry, I decided to skip lunch and go straight back to class. I could use the extra time for practice anyways. The next day, John was back in class. I didn't feel confident enough to go up and talk to him, but it was just as well. Even sitting in class, he evaded my gaze. It was as if I had physically wounded him by suggesting he replace Jacques, the very possibility a poison to his soul. PBG doted on him, make sure he came to lunch and checking over his homework before he turned it in. Occasionally, he and I made eye contact from across the room, and he'd give me a thumbs up. Those were my only indications that John was doing okay. Poor John. I feel so bad for him. But at least John was around. Even if we weren't talking, that put my mind at ease. It's better to have a friend mad at you, but still safe. That's what I think anyway. The third day after John came back to class, we were all gathered in the cafeteria for lunch. For the first time, John wasn't avoiding my gaze, and everybody was unusually cheery. Then Shane said something he never should have said. Hey John, Jacques hasn't been around for a while. What's up with that? No, why? My fork dropped onto my tray. Across the way, PBG spilled half a packet of his peanuts. I traded looks with him. Well, I mean, sometimes Bird needs to migrate for a while. Jacques just went on a little vacation. Migration? You mean what birds do for the winter? It's spring now. Heck, it's almost summer. Jacques' species doesn't even do that kind of thing, besides. John scoffed. Well, thank you so much for telling me what I already know about my own bird. I'm saying that Jacques wanted to take a bit of a break, okay? Don't go questioning me just because you're such an elitist British know-it-all. That's not what I was doing. It just didn't make any sense. So you thought I was lying? He stood abruptly. PBG put a hand on his shoulder. Hey dude, calm down. Let's just finish the rest of the meal, eh? I can't believe this. John gathered his tray and stormed out of the room. I watched him go with worry in my heart. He wouldn't want company after this, would he? I don't know. We'll see if she goes after him in the next episode. So, man, this keeps taking a turn. It's definitely a roller coaster of emotions for sure. I'll see you guys next time.